I'm Dr. Antenucci. I started my career in dentistry in the Air Force, where I helped our military personnel get healthy and stay healthy. From there, I built a successful practice in Huntington, New York, and later as a teacher, lecturer, and author, I shared my knowledge and experience with students and fellow healthcare professionals. And now my journey's taken me here, to explore the world of health, wellness, diet, fitness, and nutrition, as together we discover and find the good life. If you're like me, these weeks of staying at home are both a blessing and a curse. I think we've all had a chance to slow down and reassess what's important in life. Spending time with our families, doing so many things we've always been too busy to do. But it's also a stressful time because of change and because of uncertainty about what the future holds. I really believe that above everything else, it's the uncertainty regarding the future that's the most difficult thing for all of us to come to terms with. So I decided that I wanted to have a show today that highlights the positive. A show that helps us guide us through the difficulties we're facing. A few weeks ago, when sheltering in place was just starting, I had a great conversation with Rittemeyer about his special area of expertise, mental toughness. It's such a timely interview that I want to share it with you right now. People today find themselves faced with a really unnatural situation, not having human contact. There's no school, no work, no restaurants, no bars, no play dates for kids, no sports events, you name it. Rittemeyer is a former U.S. Marine and an expert in the field of mental toughness and emotional intelligence. In the past, he's taught executives and sales professionals how to overcome the limits brought on by fear and emotions and to replace them with clear, concise, critical thinking that get results. I want Eric to share his thoughts on how we can all benefit from this thinking today. So welcome to the show, Eric. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Gene. It's an honor to be on with you. Thank you.
Tell us about yourself.
I'm a mental toughness guy. I'm all things mental toughness, and I work with sales teams like you said, but I also just work with everyday people, just trying to get them to understand that we're emotional creatures. Everything we do based on emotion. We're hardwired to feel first and think later. The majority of us don't have control of our emotions. So when we enter into situations that can be stressful or if we're under pressure, if we realize that we're going to handle these situations emotionally, we're able to control that. And then we can balance it out with logic. And that's what's really difficult to do. So I'm all about helping people to balance out logic and EQ and to understand that they are inversely related. So as one goes up, the other goes down. The more emotional you are, the less logical you are, and vice versa.
How do you help people understand the difference in themselves between what is emotional and what is logic? Because everybody processes these things differently. And right now, it's such a hard time.
They sure do, Dr. Gene. I think the main thing is when I start out with my coaching clients, especially, I call this facilitated introspection. And it's basically just an introspective process where I try to pull things out of people that are very deep-rooted issues, feelings. And, the most important part of this is them operating from objective reality, them knowing what's fact and what's fiction. When we have crises like this, these major catastrophic events, and we dealt with them in the past, but it's very important to have control of what we're thinking because, we have no control over what's happening right now, but we do have control over how we respond to it.
So many people put emphasis on staying healthy and thinking that it's a physical thing or a diet thing, but mental health is a major part of it, right?
Oh my goodness, I could not agree with you more, Dr. Gene. And I view this as we're addressing this epidemic or this pandemic right now from what I call a single variable analysis, which means we're putting 100% emphasis on physical health, which don't get me wrong, that's important. We should absolutely put emphasis on that. But we have to take a step back and view this from a multivariable analysis, which means not just where we are right now, but where we're going to be moving forward.
One of the other challenges I see that people are really afraid, and I think part of that is they're watching news 24/7 and just fear is being projected from that and they're internalizing that. So how do we deal with separating fact from fear and our emotions from the fear and becoming tough in that sense?
Yeah, and I think we need to break this down into two sections here, Dr. Gene. And first off, from an adult standpoint, I think we have the more mental capacity to, hear things and understand what's real and what's not real and what's fact and what's fiction. What we have to be very, very hyper aware of are our children. we have to understand our children are going through a scary time. This is really equivalent to their 9/11. I mean, you think about 9/11, September 11th for us, the emotional impact that had on our generation. Our kids are really experiencing that right now. We have to really help them, guide them through this time, get them to understand, hey, what you're feeling's okay. Let's talk about your feelings. Me as daddy, you as mommy, we understand that, we address your issues. We understand your feelings, but let's also try to get an understanding of why you feel how you feel. Let's look at facts and let's help you understand that feelings are okay, but let's help facts guide our feelings.
Can you give us some bullet points as to, if there were 5 most important things that you could share with people in this short time? What would you say?
Number 1 would be to rely on your relationships. Reach out, talk to people. Again, from a mental health standpoint, I hate to be pessimistic about this, but a very real after product of this is going to be suicides. I mean, we look at the Great Recession from 2008. It was followed up by 14,000 suicides afterwards. So we have to be very hyper aware of that. So I would say rely on your connections. When it comes to kids, I can't emphasize this enough, Dr. Jean, because I feel like this really does require a ton of attention. When it comes to our kids, what we need to do is we need to break this down on their level of comprehension based on their age. So we're going to have a different conversation with our 5-year-old than we are with our 15-year-old. It's important to answer their questions, but let's answer their questions and then pause and let them follow up. We don't have to try to explain quantum physics to our child if they're not asking for it and they don't need it. You probably remember this from the Marine Corps. We always say, or in the military in general, information's on a need-to-know basis. So give our kids the answers they're asking for, but let them answer. Let them come back with follow-up.
So tell me, where can we learn more about everything that you have to teach all of us?
Thank you, Dr. Jean. I appreciate that. My website's great. It's mentaltoughnessspeaker.com. I also wrote my book last September. It's called The Emotional Marine, but it's just a book full of, and I'm a Marine, so full disclosure, I basically can hardly read or write. So it's literally written on a kindergarten level with crayons. So everybody can read it, but it's very basic stuff just on how to be more likable and how to get people, just how to connect with people. We've lost that. We need to go back to the days of make love, not war. It's Hakuna Matata, so it's just basic tips on how to get people to be more likable and how to better connect. I'm on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. So I really appreciate you having me here today. It's been awesome talking with you.
Take care and be safe.
You too, sir.
We'll be right back with more of Finding the Good Life. Welcome back to Finding the Good Life. I want to start off featuring an uplifting interview from an earlier show that's all about the power inside of a person to make amazing changes during diversity. We'll be speaking with my wife, Karina Gentinetta, who lost everything a decade ago during Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, and he used the time that it took to rebuild our city to redirect her talents to create some really beautiful works of art. Passion. Without it, life is just plain unfulfilling. My next guest has an amazing story to tell about the transformation that occurs when you find and live your passion, and in the process you find a new life. I'm so excited to introduce Karina Gentinetta. She's my wife, and she has the best story to tell us, a story that spans from Buenos Aires to New Orleans to New York. Hi, Karina.
Hi, honey. How are you?
I'm great. Now, I know that your story is so amazing, and I want you to share it with us.
Well, I graduated valedictorian from high school, which gave me a scholarship to go to Tulane University. I graduated summa cum laude from there, and then went on to law school.
Yeah, she went off to law school.
So I became a lawyer, went to Tulane Law School, became a lawyer, and went straight from there to private practice, with a large law firm here in New Orleans.
Well, Karina, Dr. Jean has told me about your personality and tenacity. I bet you were quite the lawyer.
I was good at it. I have the good fortune to have the intellect of my father and the creative nature of my mother, which has always been at conflict or at odds with each other.
But you're not practicing law now.
No, what brought about the change in your life?
Well, I practiced for 13 years. I clerked for a federal judge. I was a law partner, and things seemed to be going, well. But in 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans and destroyed my home and everything else in it. So I lost everything and had to start, I guess, all over again for a second time in my life. You know, long story short, it took us 3 very long years to rebuild. Financially, it was very, very hard. And when we finally got to move in, my father passed away, who in my mind was immortal, was bigger than life. When my father passed away, it was a reality that, you know, life needs to be enjoyed a little bit more than than what I had been experiencing up till then.
So you decided to pick up a paintbrush?
You know, I was always creative. As I said, I have the creative nature of my mother. I had furnished my home after Katrina, buying antiques and ugly antiques that I could only afford because they were so cheap, because they were so ugly, and repainting them and making them into beautiful pieces that people were like, wow, you can do that? Why don't you do that as a business? And I thought, okay, let me give it a shot. So I started painting furniture. And I started, my first client was Courtney Love Cobain, who I've never met, but I owe my start to her, and she probably doesn't even know that. And then from there, I went on to actually painting abstracts. And that's where I'm focused right now, is my artwork.
Karina, after all of these things happened in your life, what has this blossomed into?
It's blossomed into an actual business. It's something that I love to do, but that it also financially supports the family too.
What advice would you give someone to follow their passion?
You know, a photographer who I spoke to a couple of years ago, and I can't remember his name, but he told me, jump and the net will appear. And I know that a lot of people probably were like me, where I was like, I need to see the net first. I can't jump. Yeah, I need to see the net first. Don't tell me just to jump and trust that everything will be okay, especially when you have children to support, especially when you don't have a second income. And But I did just that. I jumped, and sure enough, the net appeared, and things started happening. People started calling me, and people started wanting to buy my art. It was every day I pinch myself. I really do. I pinch myself that this is a dream come true.
Karina, you've been featured in some major national magazines with your work. Tell us about that.
I was featured in the New York Times. I was featured in More magazine. I was featured in Southern Living. Um, uh, some of the really high-end interior designers in the United States have uh, been featured in magazines like Elle Decor, and my artwork has been prominently featured along with their interiors.
That's the coolest thing, when you open a magazine and that's my painting.
It is, and sometimes it surprises me because I don't know, as you know. And in fact, there was a commercial that recently aired, and I started getting calls. Is that one of your paintings? I was like, oh my gosh, it is. And I think coming up, one of the series from I think it's CBS. I'm not sure. It's Bull. It's going to feature. It's going to be filmed in a home that has two of my pieces that is going to be prominently featured in the
That is really
TV
cool.
series. So yeah, so people call me sometimes and tell me about having seen my paintings in billboards sometimes, and it's really amazing.
Karina, tell me about how your overall well-being has changed since you went to follow your passion. Do you feel better? Tell me a little bit about just your transformation from following your passion.
Well, when you are doing something that makes you happy, and we've all been there. We've had, you know, even today, I have some of my good days and my bad days. But when you're doing something that you really enjoy, I think that everything about yourself is better. I'm not as stressed anymore. I love getting up in the morning to get a project started. Whenever I get a phone call about a new commission, I mean, I'm tingling. I think overall, I just feel happier, and there's a certain uh, the kids are better by it. You know, they have a mother who now spends more quality time and the better time with them as well. So I think when you're following your passion, when you're doing something that you really enjoy, things start coming together. I mean, things just um, they're just better overall.
Karina, where can people find more information about you and your beautiful paintings?
They can go to my website, which is www.carinagentinetta.com.
Dr. G, she's living the good life.
She's living the great life.
You found the good life, Karina.
I found a good life, but I found a wonderful husband too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Karina. When we come back, we'll be speaking with Faust Ruggiero, author of the Fix Yourself Handbook, next on Finding the Good Life. Welcome back. Here's my conversation with Faust Ruggiero, best-selling author and therapist who's devoted his energy to helping people create a balance between the physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual aspects of their selves. I'd like to welcome you to the show and tell us what have you come to understand that people actually need to fix?
Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. You know, when we talk about fixing things, fixing people, the most important thing to remember is that we're all individuals and that everything about us is unique. So when I go about helping someone, I'm not looking for some template or some grand scheme that, is somehow going to fix all their problems. I'm looking first to find out what they're all about, and then I tailor my program specifically to what they want to fix. So that and in our program, we've got 52 processes that we use, and then I apply those where they need to be applied for every specific individual.
So am I wrong in thinking that if people need help with these issues during normal times, there are a lot more challenges being faced today by everybody?
You know, you're right on target. If we can't get through a normal day without stress and conflict and all the confusion, and then we find ourselves emotionally reacting on that level, when we get to a crisis situation similar to the one the country is involved in now, we really have nothing to do. There's no way for us to address that situation. We really have to get to the point that in our daily lives, we're able to deal with those intellectually based on facts, and we're letting our emotions come into play a little bit later, not rule the whole enterprise.
And a big part of that is the information that we take into ourselves. And right now there's just an overload of information and there's misinformation. So how do you suggest that people deal with all this, with the information that they have and with sifting through the various levels of information that we're faced with?
You know, Dr. Gene, in my book, I talk about processes, and I talk about the first 4 processes, and they apply to just about everything. In fact, if you can't do the first 4, you're going to have problems with the program. And what I talk about is getting your intellect.
What are the first 4 processes?
The first 4 are slowing down life's pace, being honest with yourself, getting your intellect over your emotions, and then gathering facts. And what we see. Yeah, and when you look at what's happening right now, we have this scare, this whole virus thing, which is real. And then we find that a few pieces of do this or this is what we found comes into the press, and then everyone's reacting. So now we have shortages of paper products because people are reacting emotionally first. Right. And I say, slow down. Don't take the first report that you hear, whether it's on the news or it's from a friend. Slow down. Now get some facts, ask some questions before you react to it.
So give me a few specific things that people can think about and put into action right now.
The first thing I tell people, it's like in any other situation in life, you want to move positive energy forward. So you've got to get the toxic stuff out. And the toxic stuff right now is sitting in front of a television set and watching all these reports come in.
So what other things can we do to gain a sense of balance in our lives today?
You know, balance in the body for every human being is composed of your physical being, your intellectual being, our emotions, and our spiritual being. And I try to tell people to help them get those in balance. The first thing to do is take care of your body. Your what you put into your body, your sleep. With your mind, you're going to work with facts. So if your mind is working with facts, it's not reacting to needless information. And as far as spirituality is concerned, you can meditate, you can pray, you can do whatever it is that makes you feel good. But if you take care of all 4 of those parts of you every day, eventually you start feeling a little bit more peace in your life.
This is great and powerful information. Where can we find more about you, learn more about you?
Well, if you want the book, it's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, usual retailers. It's called the Fix Yourself Handbook. It has all the processes. And the way I wrote the book, it's in chapters that are 3 or 4 pages long. They're stocked with information. I give everyone the exact steps with all of these problems. There are 36 chapters. So there's 36 different problems. Each person will apply them differently. And then the advice is given at the end of each chapter. There's 7 or 8 or 9 steps that they can incorporate, tells them how to do that, and they can address problems. And it's also built as a reference book. So if you kind of lose track, you can go back to a specific chapter down the road, and it takes 3 or 4 pages to read, and you apply the information all over again. So it just keeps on going.
Now that so many people are at home, this is a great time to just download the book and start to do some more. Thank you so much for being on the show, Faust.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We have a short break, then we'll be right back with more of Finding the Good Life. This has definitely been a strange 6 weeks. It's like having been cast in a movie that never seems to end. One day you're jostling with people at Costco for the shortest checkout line, and then all of a sudden the next day you're standing outside of Costco in the rain, 6 feet from everyone, wearing a surgical mask and latex gloves and a hoodie while waiting to be allowed in the store. If I've learned anything, it's that life can turn on a dime. You blink and the world as you've known it is literally changed forever. Just like that. On Finding the Good Life in the past 7 shows during this pandemic, I've tried to highlight the positive with the message that the strength of our human spirit will carry us and propel us forward to become better and stronger. Our weaknesses and our strengths as individuals and as a society have become really obvious. People that are most susceptible struggle with the effects of poor nutrition, the lack of exercise, and the ravages of stress. And we're in awe of the work done by true heroes today. The healthcare workers, truckers, grocery store staff, FedEx workers, first responders, and so many more. They're amazing lessons they can teach us all, and we can all learn together in Finding the Good Life.